Lawmaker and Leonard Silk to discuss the swearing-in of Justice Kekere Ekun as the new substantive Chief Justice of Nigeria as West Idahosa, Senior Advocate of Nigeria. Good to see you and thanks for your time. Now, you've been there first as a politician. You've also been a lawmaker. You are Leonard Silk. Every time we hear things like this, it comes back to Temple of Justice, the hope of the common man, and people are still complaining. When those issues poke you as a player in all of this, how do you feel?
Well, I'll be honest with you. We're in dire times, put it that way. When you have a situation where even the law is not predictable, the law ought to be an oracle which is cast and you can predict the direction. We did so when we were younger lawyers. We knew what we will win and what we will not win. We had an idea of what the law said and what the law did not say at that time. But the law is dynamic too. It's growing. But I think the biggest slant to this confusion has been the politicization of the legal system, particularly the partisan politicization. You look at our courts, they do pretty well with the normal civil cases and more regular criminal cases. I think where the whole bizarre scenario occurs is when it comes to the question of political matters, whether they are electoral or party clamor or fighting for leadership of the party. It becomes so difficult for simple hierarchy to take place. The law is not so disorganized. There are hierarchical positions of the law, which we are bound, both as practicing lawyers who are apostles of justice in the temple and judges who control their court and who have the final say in the interest of the people and in accordance with the judicial oath taken by them, should effectively decide without fear or favor and dispense it to all manner of men, believing in the oath you have taken and in salutation of your country and God. It's a difficult office. It's not for all. So if you are there, you must understand this.
Well, that's a very critical point that you raised there. And when you put that side by side with what the newly sworn in Chief Justice of Nigeria has said, that look, the judiciary has always been independent, is that missing the mark somewhat? I mean, she also stressed the need for cooperation between the three arms of government, the executive, the judiciary, and of course the executive. But then again, where do you draw the line between, this working in tandem and separation of powers?
Well, there's never anywhere in the world where separation of powers will be completely separate. They will always be interwoven. But the question is, even when you operate together, there are some basic thresholds that must be respected by all the players. That, for example, that the courts must be allowed to determine the disputes between citizens of Nigeria or between citizens and institutions of governance and etc. is guaranteed by the law. So we must know that, and nothing must be done to affect that jurisdiction. We also must know, the courts also must understand that they cannot stop the legislature from making laws. You cannot ask them not to perform those duties conferred on the National Assembly, for example, by Section 4 of the Constitution. Neither will you, in my view, seek to tell the police how to perform its duties as enforcement agents of the federal government of Nigeria. You cannot do so. So I believe very strongly that, yes, there's judicial independence, but what we are asking for is that the independence must come with some level of integrity and public confidence, because there can be no judiciary in terms of lacking credibility once the public do not believe that they have, one, access to the courts, and two, access to justice. Then the whole thing is a big burden, for nationhood. There must be a place.
So how do you extricate the judiciary? How do you ensure that the judiciary is truly, indeed, independent?
Correct. A few factors. First, there must be that sense of discipline. In other words, judiciary itself must appreciate the fact that it must subject itself to the hierarchy of courts. in order to respect the traditions of that institution. The second is it must be able to discipline its own and recommend erring lawyers to the appropriate disciplinary body, because it takes the lawyers to institute these actions that have caused embarrassment in some cases to our country. It's not as if the judges just invite these cases onto themselves. Right. There are lawyers who take these cases, notwithstanding that many of these cases have been decided on sound principles of law, even at the highest level. And then you continue to relitigate the same thing over and over, knowing fully the settled principles of the law.
You know, it comes back to how you started. You also spoke about confidence. There must be this confidence that the people will have with the judiciary. It comes back again to the political matters, which is what really irks many Nigerians, if you ask them to put it on a scale. How can we get to that point with the help of the new CJN and others in the Temple of Justice to see that political matters are not always resolved within that judicial space as against what we should, what ought to be in the electoral process?
It won't be the business of the judiciary to tell politicians how to conduct their matters. It's the political class that will have to come up with a theory which will settle how the political class behaves. Behavioralism of the political class is part of the political problem of the nation. And so when they take all of this to the judiciary, they drag the judiciary into the quagmire of the very many cases that they bring before the judiciary, both justiciable and unjusticiable.
I get the issue, but the confidence aspect of it, once, for instance, if you're hard done by in the process, in the electoral process, time was when you say, okay, when we go to court, truly
last hope of the common man.
But it doesn't really come out that way. And that is why a lot of people are saying that, look, it doesn't look like
I appreciate that. And you see, that's why I started by saying that the judicial officers themselves must respect the hierarchy of the courts. Secondly, they must be able to punish those of their own, who engage in any form of judicial rascality. It takes rascality for a judge, despite the decided decision of the Supreme Court, to go the other way.
Yeah. So very quickly, let's also touch on the local government elections. Quite a number of questions have been raised as to, I mean, the Supreme Court ruled on the financial autonomy, or full autonomy of the local governments. I think it was around July, about 3 months ago. Now, it's raised some questions as to, number one, well, of course, the court ruled that unless they are democratically elected, the funds will be withheld. Now, you need 90 days notification for INEC before you can hold elections. Do you have a situation now where state governors are, rushing very quickly to hold elections? Number one, can the governors or the states actually wait for 90 days?
Why, if the law says so, why can't they wait?
Considering the circumstances.
Don't forget, the governors themselves operate democratic monarchy in this country. They are democratic monarchs. And if you look at the history of Nigeria's shaky democracy, it is largely because of the role of the governors that have become larger than the constituents that they represent.
Right.
So if the law says so, you have no option. It's not your private business. You follow the rule of law. It's not something you are about to inherit and you think you have performed the traditional ceremonies. It's now your turn. No.
So now that they've not waited for the 90 days, they've gone ahead. Any implications?
In my opinion,
yeah,
that should have been simple advice from the Attorney General of that state. He should have examined those laws and give the right decisions. I mean, right advice, so that the governor can make the right decision. So I am of the opinion that if those are the contents and spirit of the law, it should be complied with. It's simple about that.
Well, it doesn't look that simple because, again, on one hand, you just reminded us that some of them have become democratic despots, so to speak. How can such individual listen to the counsel of his appointee, who is the Attorney General of the state?
Yeah, but if he doesn't listen, he should at least listen to the wordings of the Constitution, the supreme law of our nation. No one can be bigger than that Constitution. So if it is there, do as it says. In that way, you navigate safely. You're rushing to run to conduct local government elections. They can be easily set aside. So why hurry if you can do it slowly, steadily, and safely and get what you want?
So now that some have gone ahead to hold these elections, what are the implications?
Well, it depends on whether their elections were challenged. It's not a one-size-fits-all. If there was no challenge, and here it goes. But when the challenge arises, the issues will be decided and limited to the case that was in hand. That's the point.
All right, we'll have to leave it there. West Idahosa, Senior Advocate of Nigeria, thank you very much for joining us on News.
I appreciate it. Thank you for having me.